Thoreau, 1817 to 1862. So Thoreau is Emerson's BFF. They were very close friends, but Thoreau was like the crazy wild friend, and Emerson was the kind of, straight and narrow friend who was always getting Thoreau out of trouble. But as you can tell by his picture, Thoreau is a little eccentric, little crazy. He is a transcendentalist, and I said into the woods because we'll get to that. Okay, so as far as Thoreau's early life goes, he was born in Concord, Massachusetts. He loved the outdoors from a very early age. He also went to Harvard, but unlike Emerson, who was such a tryhard, Thoreau was kind of just like average. He didn't really put a lot of effort into work. He never ranked above the middle of his class, and Emerson has criticized him in writing, and I'm sure to his face, for lacking ambition. Thoreau got a job as a school teacher, but he was removed from that position because of they thought he was trying to indoctrinate the children, and his teaching was a little bit too progressive, we'll just say that. He had no interest in his family business, which was a pencil making business. So he said, no, thank you. I don't want to make pencils for the rest of my life. And at this point in time, he proposed to his lady friend, and she rejected him. I mean, literally, he has no job. He doesn't want to be a part of the family business, so I can't blame her for not wanting to marry him. So, in his life, however, Thoreau was kind of always a baby transcendentalist. So one of the things he did that was a little bit rebellious. Now consider the time period. I know this doesn't seem crazy to us. At Harvard, when they went to chapel, they were required to wear a black coat to chapel, and he wore a green coat simply because the rules required him to wear black. A little bit more weighty rebellion is his refusal to pay his taxes, which actually landed him in jail. So that was a little bit more of a weighty rebellion. Obviously, he upped the ante. And then he, as an abolitionist, helped runaway slaves escape from the South into Canada. Whoops. Hipster civil disobedience. We'll talk about civil disobedience really briefly. So Thoreau is mostly known for his political writings. I'm not going to have you read any of them because I think they're a little bit dry. And I feel like that is something for maybe Lang or even a social studies class. But Thoreau essentially, and again, I'm abbreviating this, argued that individuals shouldn't allow the government to overrule them or to, in his words, atrophy or stiffen or freeze up your conscience, and that the individual has a duty to avoid allowing the government to make them agents of injustice. And I think that's really interesting considering modern times. So yeah, he was writing about this in 1845, 46, and we're still, having similar issues in 2020. Mostly what sparred his, political movements was the current events, obviously slavery, and then the Mexican-American War. He was not a proponent of supporting the war efforts. And one of the key takeaways from his resistance to civil government is that voting for justice is the same thing as wishing for justice. Instead, he was a big fan of active participation, active rebellion, being activist instead of pacifist, which is kind of interesting because the Transcendentalists did value peace, but they also valued activism to get to that peace. So they weren't just sitting around wishing for it. They were making it happen. Okay. If you're into that, you can read any of his pieces, his political pieces. But we're going to read excerpts from a book that he wrote, In the Woods. So on July 4th, 1845, this is right after Thoreau got rejected. He was a little bit down and out. And Emerson was like, hey, I think that a man needs to retire and go into the woods. So why don't you go? I have a cabin off of Walden Pond in Concord. Why don't you go hang out there for a few days and like get your mind off of everything? So Thoreau went and stayed there for 2 years. 2 years. While he was there, his goal was to live as simply as possible, to get rid of all of the drama of life, and to be close to nature, as advised by his buddy Emerson. And what came out of that is the book called Walden, and it's essentially a journal of his time and experiences in the woods. We are going to read excerpts from the opening of Walden and the conclusion of Walden. Okay, so like I said, the text that we're reading is 2 excerpts from Walden, and basically what's happening is Thoreau's chilling in the woods in his little cabin, and he's reflecting and he's writing down these reflections, and that's what we're going to read. And of course, it's not just like a nature journal, it's a nature journal and then comparing nature to life and talking about being introspective, etc., etc. And it's considered a classic piece of American literature, so you're welcome. He was 28 years old when he left civilized life and moved to the pond. I already talked about this. Emerson's influence. And again, I think that this is absolutely relatable. We talked about this with nature. We all sort of escape. Actually, I'm looking outside right now. I can't wait to go outside and just sit in the sunshine. I know I'm not getting like into the woods, but just to be outside. So we can completely relate. Here is, so we can still go today to visit. Everything's still kept up. This is the cabin. He wasn't roughing it by any means. I mean, it's small, but it's not like a shack. As you can see, it's got a table, a little dining table, a fireplace, a lovely bed. This is Walden Pond from an aerial view. So while he's here, keep in mind that he was able to walk into town fairly easily. It's not like he was completely isolated, like in Alaska, away from everyone in the final frontier. He was able to walk into town. He did walk into town to get supplies periodically. Okay, so this is just a quote to kind of think about food for thought from Walden. It's not from the text, the part of the text that we're reading, but it is quoted a lot. So I'll read it to you and then you can just kind of think about what he's saying. Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. I sat at a table where were rich food and wine in abundance and obsequious attendance, but sincerity and truth were not, and I went away hungry from the inhospitable board. The hospitality was as cold as the ices. I thought that there was no need of ice to freeze them. They talked to me of the age of the wine and the fame of the vintage, but I thought of an older, a newer, and purer wine, of a more glorious vintage, which they had not got and could not buy. The style, the house and the grounds, and entertainment passed for nothing with me. I called on the king, but he made me wait in his hall, and conducted like a man incapacitated for hospitality. There was a man in my neighborhood who lived in a hollow tree. His manners were truly regal. I should have done better had I called on him. Okay, so this is all about fake people and people who are obsessed with material goods and fancy things rather than actually being legitimate good people. Food for thought, everyone. Okay, so obviously we're reading Walden tomorrow. I'll do one of those little videos of me talking about it, but again, it's transcendental, so I support it fully. I can't wait to hear what you guys think.